Hello, welcome to Trainyard. This is just going to be the commentary video on the map, just explaining bits on how it came to be, bits of design reasoning, and hopefully just a bit more in-depth explanation on the map itself. If I do look in this direction throughout the video, it's just because I have a little script of beats to hit, things like that. I'll try and do it all in one go. That's probably not going to happen, you know, I may cut it here and there just so it's a bit more fluid, but that's fine. Right, we're just starting off in the blue spawn here, on one side of the blue spawn I should say. So we have the resupply lockers here, and then I think there's about 6 or 7 spawn entities on this side, 4 players to spawn, and resupply lockers there, exit there, big exit door, and then you've got this bridge over here which leads you to the other side. Literally the same thing, you know, spawn entities, resupply lockers, just different options of exit. So on this side you'll come down here, and you'll notice this kind of barrier that splits off players, and we'll get to that in just a moment. And then you have your exit points here which lead down into this lane, and then the lane over on the other side, which we'll just have a look at first, just because in my opinion it looks a bit nicer. So with the banister and the fence here, it kind of follows that out here to this fence here as well. The idea is just to kind of split players up a little bit. When I was designing the map, I kind of had a bit of a bias to this this side, this lane. I just thought it looked the nicest, looked the most appealing. So I thought myself I would personally, you know, go this way a few times, but I thought, you know, how can I kind of split the players up for the playtesting so that some might not run that way if they do think it maybe even looks the best? How can I guide players more towards this kind of route towards the mid capture point? And this is how I decided to do it. So this is the kind of affordance I used, just to try and split players up a little bit and get them to kind of head down in different directions of the map. Obviously this is an affordance technique, but it's not a 100% committal kind of deal. You know, it is just a banister here, and if you're a scout and potentially even other classes, if you did fancy going that way instead of this, you could realistically just hop over. But I've also on the other side created this fence here, that if you do decide actually I don't want to go this way, I immediately want to switch over into this middle section here, you can just walk over that, and then vice versa if you're on this way. It's also just pointing in that direction, as you know, for a way to players to come out of spawn and see, okay, you know, this is an option of direction that I can take here. It's unfortunate about the lighting, the source engine lighting here, that's making it just look a bit darker than I'd really hope. But yeah, I've not really been able to do too much about that. That kind of just seems to be the way the engine does the lighting. As for the layout, as you'll mostly see, it is a very, very flat looking map. I mean, it is all entirely flat really, except for this little hump here where you can run over the train platform there. But otherwise the floor itself is all just, you know, one flat conformative map, except obviously the stairs and things that add a bit of different height variation for combat and things like that. So, you know, these sections here, and say here for example, are the parts where most of the verticality comes into play for this map really. As for the meshing, as you'll notice, I've put a lot of meshes in here. I jumped into the meshing phase, or at least I didn't jump into the meshing phase quickly, but I started looking into the meshing libraries quite early on. I had an initial block out that you can see on the forum, but even from an early stage you can see that I had some trains kind of dotted around in there, because I opened up that mesh library that was mentioned in one of the classes quite early on. I found it in a YouTube video, and you know, I saw that there was a lot of train meshes and cargo containers and things like that dotted around, and I thought, yeah, you know, this looks like a good set of meshes and props to use for a map really. So that's kind of how that came to be. In terms of set dressing, as you can see, I've kind of just chucked around little bits here and there of trash bottles, trash bags, things like that. One of my favourite parts up here is this little paper purchasing stool here. Some trash lying around the corner, and then just, you know, papers that have been left alone and untouched. As the map intention in terms of the theme, as you'll see on the LDD, is supposed to be a bit of a left behind kind of train yard. You know, it's not been in operation. It's been inoperational for a little while, and you know, there's obviously just some conflicts going on here between the two companies, as it seems to be for the most part in the TF2 kind of lore, I suppose. So yeah, there's a lot of set dressing principles going around, paper lying around, bottles lying about, cups on tables that have been left behind, things like that. You'll notice there are these eerie kind of skeletons within the ticket booths on this section of the map. I've said in the LDD it's just to give us a sense of mystery and something sinister may have happened here. But I also thought they looked quite funny and quite interesting to just put in the ticket booth there. Okay, so I'm next just going to quickly touch upon the points of interest, points of conflict, things like that. Just re-recording this one because I'm realising the video is actually getting on quite a bit already. So we're starting off on the bottom lane here with the train platform. Obviously Trainyard felt like it kind of needed a train platform to be fully comprehensive of the theme and the map name. Mostly used by snipers, as you can imagine. There's a very long sight line here, straight down to the other end. Ideal for the start of the round. There was a couple snipers jumping up here, just picking off a few people that were, unaware of what this lane was really. It being a playtest since all the meshing was done. So yeah, an opportunity for snipers to come here and get a good sight line on people who may not expect it, and then just have a little bit of a sniping fight as well. Also an option for other characters or scouts to just quickly run around here and just get a quick new entry to point. Then we're back in this buffer room here with the skeleton. So yeah, indeed, bit of a buffer room is what I intended for it to be. You can run in here, grab a health pack, and then you've got a couple options of exit. You can either run around here, get a straight sight line onto point, see a couple entry points for enemies, and help out your team a bit. Or if you're someone a bit more long range, you may want to walk up to the catwalk section here for an even longer sight line. Yeah, as I say, best for sniping. You can pick off people as they're entering the point, on the point, that sort of thing. Doesn't really offer much cover though, as I mentioned in the LDD, so you may be fighting up here for a moment, then you might want to run down here to this window here of this building for also increased long sight lines. But yeah, not much cover, so you can get easily picked off. That's what I quite like about it. We've got the ruins section here, just opposite of each respective spawn. Just broken walls, fences, to add to the theme, really. Coming under here, you've got this window to see capture point, as well as the long sight line between the ruins there as well. Back round here and through these stairs, you've got this locker room, just based on these. Unlike the other side, which has a wall separating each team. This one doesn't have that, so you can come into these rooms early in the round, mid-round, kind of whenever really, and just end up bumping into other people and try and fight for the exit door to get out onto the point and help your team. That, I believe, is it for all the major points of interest. So next, I'll just be touching upon things that were iterated on, things that were changed, all that sort of thing. Okay, so next I'm just going to do a quick run around of some of the iterations. Obviously I can't show all of them. There was a lot of iterations for the map, obviously, as you can see to the forum. Some even happening recently, such as to this catwalk. These banisters were quite high, and someone mentioned in my last playtest that snipers were able to do their thing here and then quickly duck behind cover and have no real repercussion for it. So that was recently reduced down to a lower height, so snipers and other people up here can still be hit, and it's just much more of a volatile section for them. You can be here and do a couple things, and then you have to move before you get killed. We'll touch upon a couple of the more bigger ones, as shown in the forum. So initially, in the early stages of iteration, way before meshing, I saw a lot of people doing these kind of underground sections. And I thought, oh, okay, they look pretty cool. So I added one of my own that went down from here, and I think it came up somewhere on this side, somewhere where the train platform now is. Yeah, I initially thought it was cool, but I think I did my first playtest on a Friday, and a lot of people who had these underground sections did theirs on a Monday, and it just felt like they weren't adding anything. They were just sections that no one was really using. There was all these other options above ground to use, and maybe they had a couple pickups down there, but otherwise there just wasn't really a need for it, and no one was using them. So before I even got round to playtesting, I just removed it. I thought, you know what, actually I think it's probably best if we just focus on one main kind of level of the map, because it wasn't really working for anybody else, no offense. So I just thought it probably wasn't going to work for me either. So that was removed entirely, due to my own decision. In terms of player feedback, there were obviously a lot of small ones, but one of the bigger ones early on is this wall here. This one was completely open before, and it offered a kind of other option in the top lane here to get round to the locker section. So it was open here. You could run round all the way around the back here, and then there was a couple doors here for both the red and blue team to converge back into this room in this section, obviously now blocked off. During my first or second playtest, somewhere around there, someone just mentioned that, look, the map's big enough already as it is. This section at the top lane that goes around the back and then back into this building wasn't really adding anything. No one was really using it. He mentioned that, you know, he went there a couple times and no one was really there, and it just makes the map feel a bit too big. And yeah, he was completely right. Just running around and having a look at it in retrospect, yeah, it did make the map a bit too wide, and it didn't add anything. You know, there wasn't really anyone using it, and yeah, so I removed that instantly and just made it so that this through line here was the only way to get through. Okay, so I know we're approaching the 10-minute mark now, so to not take up any more of your time, I thought I'd wrap it up with just the final things I did well, things maybe I didn't do as well, or things I could have improved. Starting off with things I did well, I'm just glad I got the meshing done, to be honest. It took probably more time than the map itself, actually, but I enjoyed it a lot. I thought, you know, the meshing was one of the most fun parts of it, you know, putting around these little set dressing pieces as well. Felt like it gave it a bit more life, a bit more story, so that was good. The map scores and ratings I was quite happy with. Whenever I did a playtest, it scored around 8, closer to 9 I think in the final week, so I was quite happy about that. In terms of iteration and changes, I listened to all the feedback that I was given, and I think I pretty much changed something about all of the feedback whether that I was given, whether it be about the level itself or the pickups, you know, all that sort of thing. And just the level itself, I'm quite happy with how it turned out. Really, as a whole, for someone who is on the programming side of the course and doesn't do any map creation, you know, this is my first map, and I've never played TF2 either, you know, for those two, because of those two cases, I'm actually quite surprised that it turned out quite nicely, but I'm quite proud of it, really. Things I could have improved, I actually wanted to do a 3D skybox. I actually attempted it, but I just could not get it working. I didn't spend a lot of time on it. I had issues compiling and with Hammer++ and things, so I kind of just knew I needed to get that done. So I didn't really have time to get that working, but I do wish I had to add a bit more immersion to the outsides of the map. In terms of meshing, a little bit more I feel like would have been nice. I know there's a lot in here from an outside perspective. It looks probably fine, but you know, I feel like this room's a little bit bland. I could have added a bit more than just vending machines, or you know, just a little bit more maybe in this section, things like that. But I think overall it's not too bad. And yeah, same goes for the set dressing, really, just, you know, little extra bits like, you know, paper lying underneath the paper stool and things like that. But otherwise, I'm mostly pretty happy with it. So I'll leave the video there. Sorry for taking the extra time, but thank you for watching, appreciate it.